All right, we're recording now.
All right, so John's going to go over the presentation I saw when I was out at Salt Lake. The point is, the week before that or so, I'd gone through the presentation via a sales engineer for Ivanti, and we had a lot of great dialogue, but it was so much dialogue that I think people got washed out. So the goal here is to have minimal interruption, but interruption's fine. I personally won't interrupt because I'm always the one that kind of throws the thing down the wrong trail, or one of the people. So, but for the team, I want the team to be able to interrupt and ask questions. But John's going to show you their unified IT deck that they have here now that's been, I think, consolidated so that you can get through the whole thing, lay the foundation, and then come back around to the items that the particular customer wants to cover.
Yeah.
So with that, John, I'll hand it off to you and let you take off.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to present to you guys and talk to you guys. I mean, my background, for those that know me, my background goes back to Citrix consulting days, and I actually came to Ivanti through way of an organization called AppCenter. I was CTO over there. So, you know, I've worked with people like Pete Downing for a long time. So I know the industry you're in. I know the space you're in. I know the things you deal with. I know the conversations that you have with your customers. I understand your comp plans and everything like that. So, you know, when we have conversations, rest assured that I get it. I get when it's difficult to sell to a customer. I get when it's difficult to pitch a message. I get when you have to break licensing apart and everything like that. And hopefully the presentation I give you today is, it's going to be high level. It's going to be higher level than the presentations you've received before. And the reason being is I consider this a message setting. This talks about who we are, who Ivanti is, why we believe we're important, why we believe we're relevant and valuable, and so forth. So I'll whiz through the presentation, but this is your presentation, so feel free to interrupt, ask questions. I'm okay with that type of stuff. It doesn't really knock me off my flow. So yeah, feel free to use this presentation as you wish. So what I'm going to talk about.
Hey, John,
go ahead.
John, I promised I wouldn't interrupt, and here I go. Guys, if you have questions, put them in the chat window and let Pete be the person who interrupts John and ask questions. So
Cool.
We're not talking all over each other. And John, I already have a couple questions, and
Yeah.
I promise I won't do this again for a little while. All right, so I'll say it just the way I wrote it. Can we bring you in to present to customers? And one of the reasons why is because the average Ivanti SE, as you probably know, does not know the space that AppSense and Citrix people came from very well.
Right. Yeah, so my role within Ivanti is, I guess the title's an evangelist, and I think that's just because they have to give me a title. But basically, my role is to support the field, primarily to support the field. I get involved in strategy and roadmap and vision and acquisitions and all of that back office stuff. But my primary function is to support the field, and what that means is that I'm a resource that you guys can tap into. So yeah, if you've got a customer that is looking at Ivanti, that needs a message, a vision, needs a, you know, a corporate deck delivering, things like that, I'm more than happy to come and help you guys, and the business itself is more than happy to have me coming out to help you guys. The one thing I would personally ask, the only thing I would personally ask is, I live in Utah, which is actually good because I'm pretty central to most places. If I'm to fly to somewhere, if you can arrange other meetings as well, it's better for me. It just, you know, it makes my justification better. It makes it look better back in Ivanti. There's no requirement for that. That's just a personal ask for me. If we're going for that one main meeting, if we can have other meetings around, it's always better. And you know, I think you guys can probably appreciate that as well. Andy, you said you had two. Have I lost you guys? Pete,
Nope.
are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there, yeah.
We might have lost Andy.
Yeah, it looks like, no, he's still there. He might be on mute. All right, I'd say just chug along, and if he chimes in again, we'll let him chime in again.
All right, sounds good. So I'm going to talk to you. Today about something called Unified IT, and this is what Ivanti. This is what we do. This is our marketing. This is our messaging. This is our our tagline, etc. So really, let me just take a step back and give you an idea of how we've reached this point. If you know anything about Ivanti, if you actually looked at some of our decks, and one of the slides that normally comes up, and I hate the slide, and I don't have it in this deck, but it is out there, and that's our DNA slide, and basically it's a lifeline. Ivanti's acquired a number of organizations over the years. There's no secret. Ivanti started life back in Landesk in 1985, and over that timeline, they acquired a number of organizations, and then recently, they merged with an organization called Heat, who themselves have done a number of organizations. So the coming together of all of these pieces of technology, if you look at it quickly, if you look at it from the from the outside, it's often easy to say, hey, Ivanti's Frankenstein. It's pieced together with all of these pieces of technology, and it's easy to see that. But the reality of it is that right from early on, our management team, most of who are still there, by the way, our management team have had this vision, and they've had this vision of bringing IT together. If we look at IT today, it's largely siloed. You've got your security team, you've got your desktop management team, you might have your help desk team, etc. And rarely do these teams interact well with each other. The security team doesn't like the desktop management team because they circumvent policy. The desktop management team doesn't like the security team because they're too strict, and so forth and so forth. And you often end up with these silos in IT, and these silos don't work together. And also these silos go out and purchase different products and different solutions, and it ultimately ends up in a mess. Our vision has always been to bring these silos together, to bring these people in IT, these groups in IT together, so that IT is more fluid, IT is more efficient, effective, and so forth. The goal basically is to unify your IT team. And all of the acquisitions that we've done have been targeted. They've either been to go into a space that we need, that IT does and that we need to be into, or to solidify a space where we want to be a leader, or we want to be the leader. So often we'll often go into a space and we'll buy like the number one, the number two within that space. Or if it's a new space, we'll go and acquire someone, see what we want to do, and then make further acquisitions in that space. So everything's kind of come together, and we've reached an inflection point now where we believe that we've got a compelling message, we've got a compelling portfolio, and finally we can go forward and actually deliver this vision of unified IT. Every business has a tagline or a motto or something like that. This is ours. Ivanti unifies endpoint security, service management, IT asset management, identity management, and unified endpoint management. We're working on this. It's a mouthful, I know. I won't ask any of you to repeat it. But ultimately, this is what we do. And these are actually the areas that we play in. If you actually break down IT, these are typically the areas that IT break into as well. And sure, there's others, and we would go to some customers and they'd say, hey, well, I have this other stack and things, and that's cool. But for the majority, these are the areas where IT breaks down. Before I talk about what we do, let's just go back and have a little history lesson. I'm not going to talk about like the birth of Windows and things like that. I don't want to go there, but I do want to talk about why we've got to where we are and why we think we're important, why we think we're relevant. If we go to early IT days and we think about how IT used to be managed, it was really simple. And the reason it was simple is because computers were not really used in every single function of an organization. So, they were used for bespoke purposes, and as a result, you had a limited number of them. IT typically dealt with manual OS installation. They install, went next, finish, and there you have Windows. And for applications, someone would have a bunch of floppy disks, stick it in, or CDs, and next, finish, and there you have your application. The concept of user help involves someone at the end of a phone phoning up and saying, hey, I need help, and then some guy had run out with his stack of floppy disks and stuff, and they would and again they would install the applications and so forth. So IT was relatively limited, but they managed. It was easy, it was simple. And then IT started to grow. We got more devices, and computing became more of a function within inside an organization. The IT team grew as well, but not in the same manner as the problems grew. All of those problems we had before, they didn't just disappear, they evolved, they kind of carried on through. Your OS installation became enterprise image management. We're now using Ghost and Tivoli and things like that to push images out. We've got this concept of a help desk now. We've actually got people that are assigned specifically to deal with users, and the first iterations of ticketing are starting to come in. Security is now a focus. We've now got malware and viruses that are really a problem or an issue in corporate IT. And IT is starting to deal with all of these challenges. And as these categories or as these areas of problems start to occur, IT is now starting to segment. You've now got teams starting to appear. And then we had the introduction of things like virtualization. Virtualization was another big inflection point. And IT grew, and as a result, silos grew and teams grew, and all of these problems that we had before, they evolved and they merged and they modified and they grew and all of this stuff. We've now got formal change management and formal processes around service delivery in place. We're now delivering applications, virtualized, physical. We're bringing apps from the cloud, and we've got desktops in the cloud. Basically, IT is bigger. It's grown, it's bigger, there's a lot more problems, and as a result, there is a lot more silos. And this is where IT is today. The teams themselves, whilst they've grown, they've not really evolved. You don't have enough people to manage all of the problems or business requirements that you have today being put on IT. They've got all of these different challenges and they're buckling under the weight. Now, the way in which IT has typically always dealt with problems, always has and probably will do for the foreseeable future, is through what we call point solutions. I have a problem, I want to go out and fix it, I buy a product. So let's take, for example, I've got an admin rights problem. I want to remove admin rights. Well, I go out and I'll buy a privilege management piece of technology. I have slow logons. That's fine. I'll go and hire a consultant to write some scripts or some login scripts for me, for example. I want to control licenses. I'll go out and procure a whitelisting technology. That's fine. I mean, these products themselves, these applications, these pieces of technology, they're not bad. I mean, if you actually take privilege management, so you take Ivanti's privilege management, and you take something like, I don't know, an Avecto or something like that, and you peel away all of the GUI and the workflow, and you look at the underlying core guts of it, the reality of it is they do the same thing, right? I mean, they all elevate and de-elevate privileges. And why? Because there's only so many ways in which you can elevate or de-elevate privileges in a Windows environment. It's the workflow, it's the functionality on top of it that really is what gives organizations their IP. But at the end of the day, these tools themselves are not always bad. The problem is the amount of tools inside an organization and the fact that IT cannot become proficient in all of them. So they end up basically using things like default configs. I'll go and spend $500,000 on a privilege management tool, but then I'll just put whatever the default config out of the box is. Well, then you don't take advantage of that tool. You don't realize that, hey, it can be used for this, that, or the other, or I can tick this box and get this feature working and so forth. In short, IT experiences a lack of innovation. There's no one innovating within IT. Now, I don't mean innovation as in terms of start your own company or even just go and look at Docker just because, hey, there's a need for looking at Docker. What I mean is innovating with your own technology. Innovating in the sense of taking that privilege management solution and understanding everything it can do. You paid $500,000 for it. Let's make sure that we leverage every piece of functionality that privilege management technology can give me. And compounding this challenge is a constant influx of new business demands. I want Dropbox, I want this, I want that, I want this new technology, I want SharePoint, I want this workflow to work. All of these are constantly coming into IT, and they have to learn to manage all of these requirements on top of all of these problems that they've already got on the left-hand side of the screen there. So where are we going? Before I move here, I'm just going to stop. Is there any questions, Pete? I can't. If I open this, is there any questions?
Let's see. I'm reading.
Nope.
I'm just reading through the comments. Nope, no questions yet. Just a lot of agreement. So Andy agrees on
Okay.
on your point, and as does Reg. So
awesome. So before we get, on only a couple more slides, and we'll get into the Ivanti stuff. But before we get there, where are we going?
John.
Yes, sir.
John, before you move on, because I really do want to hit that one hard. So, guys, if you do nothing but take away from what John just presented and end that up and wrap it up with a, hey, let's get Ivanti in here. They think this, and you guys probably think this too, Mr. Customer. If you do nothing but learn that piece of that presentation enough to get Ivanti in there for a meeting, that's a win.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So where are we going? Every vendor has a slide that says the world is changing, right? It's a new world. The reality of it is the world isn't changing. The world's the same world it's always been and will be for a while. The user is changing. The consumer of IT, they're the ones that are changing, and we're seeing something called a digital transformation. Personally, I like to call it self-service. But digital transformation is the word that Gartner uses and all of that. So we've got to use the correct terminology. But the reality of it is we're seeing a self-service world. You go to the airport, you don't have to interact with a human being anymore. You simply print your own ticket, check your own bag, and there you go. You go to Walmart, you can check out your shopping without actually interacting with a human being. You can request apps online now. You don't have to go and actually shop for software. You can even go into McDonald's and order your food at a screen and then just collect a bag, which is awesome because now I can order 3 Big Macs without feeling embarrassed. But the reality of it is that we are used to, as consumers, in our consumer life, we're used to self-service. And the same is true for IT. You know, if you think back 5 years ago, people can't install a print driver, or installing a print driver was actually hard. If you actually got a second-hand printer that didn't have the CD with it, the concept of going and finding a driver and installing that driver, that wasn't an easy thing to do. Now, my 10-year-old can probably install a printer. They'll just Google search the driver, they'll download the driver, double click, next, finish, and my printer magically just springs to life. Or, you know, you want to get wireless networking inside your organization, that's fine. Go to Best Buy, buy Netgear router, plug it in, job done, you're up and running, you've got wireless. Users are used to fixing their own problems in every aspect of their life, and IT is no different. If we think about the introduction of Dropbox, it was my wife that introduced me to Dropbox. She wanted to send me some pictures of the kids. Next thing, I have this link that turns up. I click it, and it's like, this stuff is awesome. My files are syncing, sharing. I can access them from any device. And then I look at my IT. To get to my corporate data, I have to connect through a crappy VPN. I've got experiences that's just awful. Offline files loses my data every 10 minutes, and the experience is awful. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing users going to IT and they're saying, hey, this works at home. I expect it to work inside the organization. Business and user experiences have changed. We've got the power of Google. I want to install that printer, or I want to install a plugin to do something. Let me go and Google search that. The problem is that when you Google search for that Excel plugin and it's the top link in Google and you click it, the average user doesn't necessarily know that that's not a real plugin. Instead, it's a piece of malware. They're not trying to be bad corporate citizens. They're not trying to stick it to the man. They just want to do their job. And if they can't find that plugin from Google, well, then they'll go to the user in the cube next door. They'll go to Mavis in the cube next door and say, hey, where do I find this document? And Mavis is like, well, just install Dropbox and I'll sync it with you. And all of a sudden you've got data outside your organization. Why? Well, just because they wanted to do their job. They wanted to get access to the data. And this is all driven because of strong consumer services that users expect that same experience inside the organization. The problems or the outcomes from this, shadow IT is number one. Shadow IT, where users think they're their own IT teams. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we want to kind of encourage shadow IT. Why? It takes pressure off IT, but we need to control it. We need to do it in a controlled fashion where the users can't cause problems accidentally, because then we end up with accidental security threats or users circumventing policy just because they they don't know any better. The reality is that today, IT must partner with the user, so they must become one with the user, but they also must become the business as well. They must understand that the users are customers. We can't say as IT anymore, we can't just go, hey, here's your laptop, here's your software, deal with it, and that's all you're getting. Why? Because users will leave today, and that's a problem. So what do we do? How do we help? How do we fix all of these challenges? How do we help to unify IT? Every feature, function, gadget, widget, button, piece of technology that we have ultimately fits into one of these buckets. When I say we have, I mean Ivanti has. Everything that Ivanti produces, everything you've seen presentations on, everything that the apps, the Ivanti SE took you through, fits into one of these buckets. Security, endpoint management, asset management, service management, and identity. And in fact, if you actually take a look at an IT team, your average IT team also breaks out into these 5 areas. Now, as I said earlier, some IT teams have more, some IT teams have less, different ones, etc. But ultimately, this makes sense for the majority of IT teams. Now, because we have different products and different pieces of technology in these buckets, if you take a look at the products and features and stuff individually, they've got different GUIs, different workflows, different servers, databases, all of that stuff. They are, for want of a better word, individual point solutions. Remember, that's how IT buy. So break out these buckets and you will find a collection of individual point solutions that can tactically address organizations' challenges. And as I said before, it's not the products, it's not the technologies that are the problem within IT. It's the fact that no one can become proficient in all of them. So how do we differ here? Well, it's not our products that makes us unique. It's not our products that gives us unified IT. It's our underlying platform that we've built. This here, this bottom thing that you see, this is our unified IT platform. The way I like to explain this to people or to customers is taking a Google analogy. When you use Google search, it's the best. I mean, if you compare Google with Bing or Google with other search engines that are out there, like Yahoo, for example, it's the best. It gives you the best results and all of that. Why is this? It's not because of the servers it's hosted on, because they're all pretty much the same across the different vendors. Largely, it's probably not the algorithm anymore either. It's because of the amount of data that Google can hook into. It can hook into your email, it can hook into your business apps, it can hook into a ton of information that these other vendors just do not have. And it can bring all of that information together to give you a product, which in your case is search. Now, when you use search, you don't necessarily think what's behind it. You're not thinking about that Google platform that ultimately powers all of this. But the reality is that Google platform also powers Gmail and Maps and everything else that Google does. And that's what gives all of these individual products that power. It's that Google platform that unifies them all. In the same way, it's the unified platform here that brings all of the power to these Ivanti products as well. This is what makes us different from a ServiceNow in the service management category. This is what makes us different than an Avecto in the privilege management category. Our unified IT platform breaks into 3 or 4 distinct areas. The first is discovery, because you can't manage what you don't know about. Discovery is all about going and finding out what machines I have, what assets, what licenses, all of that. And then it's reporting and analytics. And reporting and analytics is about presenting you data from any or all of these categories and products that we have in meaningful, insightful ways. So, for example, I can give you a report. Let's say you're doing a Windows 7 to Windows 10 migration. I can give you a report of all of the assets on your network. I could say you've got 100 PCs, and of those 100 PCs, 50 of them, based on the memory, the CPU, the hard disk space, etc., 50 of them can be upgraded to Windows 10. And that's a good report. That's a useful piece of data, don't get me wrong. But the reality is, so can a lot of other vendors. ServiceNow can probably give you exactly the same information. With our reporting analytics platform and the fact that we can bring in a ton of other pieces of data that we have connectors to, or that we can pull data from other areas of technologies that we have, we can give you a report that not only says that, but can say, hey, but out of those 50 machines, 25 of them are going to be out of warranty in 6 months. So you're going to end up replacing them anyway. And when you replace them, you're going to have to do all of this work again. So what it actually makes sense to do is financially replace those 25 machines now whilst you're doing the upgrade, because the costs associated with that is X, Y, and Z. This is data that's making a recommendation to you. It's taking the DevOps type of approach to IT management, which is based on feedback from pieces of technology. I'm making meaningful recommendations. I'm telling you what you need to do before you actually need to know it. This is unique, and this is what differentiates a lot of our technology, the reports and analytics. And then the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that really glues all of these pieces of technology together, is automation. And automation is what allows us to raise an event in security that then kicks off a task in endpoint management, that raises a ticket in service management, that locks down a user account. Automation is what really allows these boxes or these pieces of technology to work together and not just as siloed individual point solutions. The benefit to this platform, or the benefits to this platform, save time and cut costs, increase user satisfaction, lower risks, optimize efficiency, and provide smart data and analytics. So, some examples here of unified IT. And these are examples where our customers are using our technologies to do unified IT, and things that are demonstrable. In other words, these are not things we've just thrown on a slide. These are actual things that we can demonstrate and implement for customers today. And this is not an extensive list. This is just some we've picked out. So let's just take a look at a couple of these. Onboarding and offboarding is a perfect example here. Onboarding and offboarding is a massively manual intensive process. There's humans involved in every step. You know, everyone thinks that onboarding is just a matter of, hey, creating a user account and away you go. And it's not. Typically, your HR would create a record, then IT would create all the user accounts, and they would assign data permissions, install applications, purchase, acquire, provision hardware. I mean, there are a number of steps that are done by humans. And the problem is that if you forget or you miss out any one of those steps, that you can have problems. Let's hypothetically say that you miss out the step that assigns data permissions. What happens then? Well, then the person can't access their documents that they're supposed to do. And then they'll go to Mavis in the cube next door and they'll say, where do I get these documents? And next thing you know, Mavis is installing Dropbox and you've got the data outside the organization just because there was a process or step missed in onboarding that user. So what we will do is we'll take all of these steps, which we can already deliver with our technologies, with our different pieces of the puzzle, and we'll automate them all. We'll use automation as the bridge, as the glue that brings all of those different pieces of the puzzle together so that the user never has to actually touch that process. All that happens is HR creates a record, gives the person a job role, everything else automatically kicks in. Windows 10 migration is another example of this. You know, a Windows 10 migration, again, is a manually intensive process. It's not just a matter of downloading Windows 10 and going next, 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 finish. You have to take the personalization off, take the applications off, figure out which applications work on Windows 10, figure out if you need admin rights, copy the user data, and then upgrade the OS, put all of that stuff back on. I mean, again, any one of those steps gets missed out, then it's a problem. Now, we've got all of the pieces of technology in the stacks to deliver a Windows 10 migration, but that core underlying platform, that unified IT platform, is what can bring all of this together and do that for you, make smart, intelligent decisions and really make decisions on things that you don't necessarily know yet, make corrections to the process that you've not necessarily thought about. So again, some examples of unified IT. Now, unlike tactical problems whereby, you know, remove admin rights, that would be an example of a tactical problem. These are projects. These are projects within IT where you would use multiple pieces of technology. So I just want to make that distinction there. So let's break a couple of these out. We just spoke about onboarding and offboarding. Here's are the steps here. Now the stuff you see down the bottom, these are the stacks. and then the core platform underneath. If they are lit up, it's using that piece of the puzzle. So here you can actually see onboarding and offboarding is actually using everything. This would be a complete user unified IT technology deployment. Employee starts, HR creates a record, there's new accounts created automatically. You see the automation icon here. So automation kicks in, creates these accounts automatically. Hardware is automatically requested, maybe a service management ticket's raised and someone goes and procures that hardware. And then let's say the user changes roles, changes functions, their accounts are automatically updated, software's changed, etc. Now again, this isn't an extensive flow, but it does highlight how automation can actually glue those steps together, and automation is provided as part of this unified IT platform. Isolation and remediation is another example. A piece of malware is detected, it's automatically blocked and blacklisted. An alert is raised in the service management platform, which then triggers someone to go and perform an investigation. They can remote control into the machine. They can figure out what's going wrong and then make a decision based on whether you want to remediate the problem or you want to just go ahead and re-image the machine. So this is an example where 3 pieces of our core technologies would be used, but then the underlying core unified IT platform gluing all of this together. And Windows 7 migration, we've already talked about. Now, the thing with Windows 7 to 10 migration is we're actually using 2 stacks here. So this would be an example where you're actually taking 2 stacks to actually perform a task. But again, you still get that core underlying platform. So let's talk about licensing for a second. How's our technology licensed? Well, really, our technology is licensed in 3 areas. And what we've done is we've worked really hard to actually make our technology simple for an organization to both implement and license. You know, we've got a lot of technologies, as you saw. If we actually look at the stacks and you break the stacks out, we've got a number of different products. And historically, what we've had is when a customer's wanted to do something like a Windows 7 to 10 migration, there's been a quote sheet which includes, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 SKUs. And that's impractical. It's very, very difficult to work in that world. So what we did was we simplified our licensing and really brought it down into 3 key areas. The first is a tactical play, and this is a single use case. I want to remove admin rights, and that's fine. You'll go out and you'll buy privilege management from Ivanti. So within the security stack, you'll take one piece of that security stack, one product, which would be application control, and go ahead and solve that privilege management solution. From that point, you kind of move on. You then start to look at your projects being a Windows 7 to 10 migration, your project being a secure service management implementation, your project being license optimization and license control, for example. And for this, you're actually going to want to use multiple stacks. You might need some security functionality. You also might need some service management functionality, or a combination of all of that. And for that, we have a pick-2 license agreement. And a pick-2 license agreement gives you the ability to say, hey, I want to take any 2 combinations of these stacks to achieve my project. Now, depending on, regardless of where you are in this licensing slide, you still get that core underlying platform. You get the automation, you get the discovery and analytics, you get the reporting. And that comes because that's what gives us the value. So even if you're a pick-2, if you're a complete UIT, you still get the advantage of that key underlying platform. And then the final one that you see there is strategic. This is, hey, I see the strategic value in unified IT and the benefit of that core underlying platform, and I'm bought in. I'm bought in with a story, I'm bought in with a message. And therefore, we have the UIT license agreement, which basically gives you access to everything that we have. So some examples of where pick-2 would be used. We've spoken through a couple of these anyway. Things like ITSM and identity, or UEM and identity, and so forth. And then obviously we've got the unified IT license as well.
Hey, John, I do have a comment for you on this.
Yep.
So that endpoint security pillar right there, right? Every time I see that, I'm like, oh man, that's great. And then I start thinking, okay, where's the antivirus buried in that? Because every client has an antivirus play of some type, right?
Yeah.
And what I've learned that day I was on site with you guys is you guys have one, but it's not in-house. It's Bitdefender and maybe CrowdStrike. You can elaborate on that all you want. But I want to bring that up for everybody because the first part of establishing one of those pillars is something every client already has, especially if you ask the question, hey, what are you doing for AV? Are you looking at a new one? You know, you got the whole, US based, non-US based AV thing going on. Now, one comment or feedback to you, and you tell me where this fits or not. As of right now, neither Bitdefender nor CrowdStrike count as an ELA one, right? It doesn't get you credit for one, or does it, or will it? Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So so you're right. As of right now, no. Here's the challenge. Here's the challenge with licensing. So, and again, this is a moving target for us. We're still massaging this. We're still trying to figure things out. What's included, what's not. So generally, the rule of thumb right now is if we create it, it goes part of the unified IT stack. Now, obviously, this can change, but that's as it sits today. And that's stuff we have now. That's stuff we have in the future as well. The problem when we OEM something is we've obviously got to pay a license on that as well. And it's very difficult for us to commit to including OEM features and functionality ongoing inside something like a unified IT license. And the reason being is, let's say, hypothetically, with your license for unified IT, and tomorrow we go and OEM a piece of functionality because we want to deliver something, and in essence, our OEM agreement to that is 50% of the license that the customer's paid. That obviously would cause us challenges downstream. So when it comes to things like the OEM technology, things like the antivirus and stuff like that, this is where you would work with your Ivanti reps, your Ivanti counterparts, and we'll see what fits, and we'll make the decisions. We'll make the decisions based on that. Does that help? Does that make sense, Sam?
Yeah, no, it does for me.
So John,
it's certainly a conversation starter. Go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
Oh yeah, so I just wanted to ask kind of a question around the licensing. So if you do a pick two, and I think this is a great model because it gives you the ability to, maybe they're only interested in one pillar, and
Yep.
Then maybe they do a second one. Now is there an upgrade path to the unified IT? So from a SKU perspective, to
Yeah.
if I spend the money now, do I get some kind of break maybe down the road if I decide to upgrade?
Yeah, so there's license upgrades in all of this. So let's say you're a point solution now, for example. Well, then we'll do something that, like the maintenance you have, for example, we'll credit you for that maintenance based on the licensing and stuff like that. That allows you to upgrade. There's also upgrade SKUs, like, so for example, if you're an endpoint manager customer, so you're an old Landesk customer, but you want the workspace management, you want the policy stuff. Well, then for that scenario, I think it's like a $20 list price add-on. So that there are upgrade SKUs, there are upgrade paths, and going from tactical to pick two and pick two to ELA, yes, there are attractive upgrade options.
All right, cool. Sorry, Andy, you had something to say.
All right, do we have any other questions here? Let me open this box and see. Nope, it's all Andy. All right, cool.
I have a question. This is Reg.
Yes.
Afternoon, John. Thank you. So each of these platforms is kind of the unifying of, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I missed the main point here, but it's all a unifying of point solutions. And then you have basically tied these together into packages to address, these quote, you could say 5 pillars of IT oversight. Do you have additional development going on within each of these pillars? And if so, does that make sense? I mean, usually you'll take your product and make it, give it utility, and then later on you'll add to it and go beyond that and start to.
Yeah.
You have an end vision of where you want it to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm curious as to how close to that end vision you are.
Right. So that's a really good really good question. Let me just jump back to a slide here that's got this one, because we got the core platform on this. So you are right. We've got different products in all of these areas. So like this would be application control, and then we've got some patching technology here. So these are all individual products in their own right. And these products themselves have got roadmaps. They've got deliverables, we've got requirements from customers that we've got to deliver upon. And maybe that's, we've got to deliver a different GUI here, or this one wants a function in the agent, or this one needs to be able to do Linux and things like that. So these products themselves have got their own individual roadmap. Now, what we could have done is we can take the next 5 years or whatever it is and create an Uber GUI that has all of the buttons, widgets, gadgets, everything from all of these different pieces of technology, one single GUI, whether it be web-based or whatever, and deliver you that GUI. Now, the problem with that, though, is in 5 years' time, when we deliver that, the customer gets absolutely nothing. Sure, they have a nice fancy GUI, but the world's moved on. I mean, Burger King's got self-ordering screens and stuff like that. But no, I mean, I jest, but the reality of it is that we've not delivered any features or functions or core things to the technology. That concept of Uber GUI and all of these, that's actually integrated IT. People are doing that today, integrating the different tools, etc. We don't really gain anything from that. Unified IT, the bringing together of the IT silos, is really done down here in our core platform. And again, it's taking that DevOps model to IT, making recommendations that you need to go and do this before the IT administrator realizes that they need to go and do whatever that is. It's taking information and it's making decisions for IT. It's automating it. It's taking an AI type of approach to IT. This is how IT is going to ultimately be unified. So as you can imagine, this ultimately is what differentiates us. Even bringing a GUI together, let's take the service management console. How do we compete against ServiceNow? We'll add a feature, they'll add the same feature, they'll add a feature, we'll copy that feature. That's the way vendors work, right? That's not gonna make us any different than ServiceNow. However, what ServiceNow don't have is they don't have this machine learning element down here that can take information from here and relationships that we have with the likes of CDW and Lenovo and et cetera, and give you that platform that can make those decisions for you. This takes a lot. This is, we're consuming a lot of cloud resources, we're consuming a lot of big data resources. There's a lot that ultimately sits behind this platform. So as you can imagine, we are putting an extraordinary amount of effort into developing this platform. But that said, we still have to honor promises, commitments, etc., and we still have to maintain these products so that these products don't become legacy technology. We don't want that to happen. So yeah, we carry on investing in each individual solution, and then we carry on. We also invest a lot down here in the core underlying platform as well. Does that answer that question?
I want to add to that real quick, right? So it's all about money, right? It's all about procurement. It's all about IT leadership and getting them to understand this at a high level. Even though us, Pete, myself, Red, several other people on this call, we all get hung up on, oh, I need one console to manage it all. It really doesn't matter that much. Having the unified solution doesn't have to get to that level. And besides that, I know Pete and myself and you, we've all been around the Citrix world for long enough. For 20 years, I've heard of them talking about unified console. You'll never get there.
Right.
Yep. And that's true, because what will happen is some customer will want some product, and that product will be developed, and you might have unified the console of the other four, but now you've got a fifth. So now you've got to create another console. And it's a race that you'll never win.
You'll burn a lot of money and mind share trying to get there. And
correct. But we will still continue, each individual piece of technology will continue to ensure that those technologies are the leaders of their categories or their spaces. And we will continue to develop this platform down here. So this platform, we have a number of these pieces right now that customers are taking advantage of today. And we also have a really aggressive roadmap for the next 2-3 years that continues to bolster this platform and continues to add functionality to to this platform. And sometimes some of the features and functions that we're investing a lot of money into in this platform, we won't actually charge for. It just makes sense to have it. So a lot of this, like reporting analytics capabilities, for example, we're not actually going to charge for this. It's because this is what's going to drive a lot of the capabilities in these products that sit above them. But it's key. It's what makes us different.
Sorry, I've lots of questions. Do you mind if I ask another one?
No, that's why I'm here.
The automation part, I'm very curious about. Are you leveraging? You mentioned ServiceNow, but in a sense, you're saying you're a replacement for ServiceNow or competitor too, right?
Yeah. So within the service management world, our service management, like things like help desk, service desk, etc., they would compete directly against ServiceNow. And in terms of things like the automation and stuff like that ServiceNow can provide, that's actually a function of our core service. So you would buy the service management products and you get the core services involved, included in that anyway. And the automation is part of that. The automation is actually a piece of technology that we acquired from RES, from Res Technology, from the Res Technologies. And we're leveraging a lot of that in our core services to deliver that functionality.
So this is custom built automation by Ivanti, not necessarily leveraging like VMware or ACI or.
So if you buy one of these pillars, the answer to the question is yes. Ultimately, those connectors and stuff are things that we create, but it's also, there's nothing stop vendors or third parties creating connections as well. But if you was to purchase a service management pillar, the technology here, the automation that you get pertains to the Ivanti product. So the automation would allow you to interact or manage or automate Ivanti functionality. If you wanted to go outside of that, if you wanted to actually leverage automation to go and like automate VMware or go and automate Salesforce and all of that, if you wanted some of those additional connections, well, then you need the full-blown automation technology, which there's a license for that, or you get that with the full-blown the full-blown ELA license, the third option of the licensing.
So John, just to clarify too, because so the automation is part of the core, and the core comes with any module you buy.
So a version of automation, yes, automation comes in the core. The core comes with any module that you buy. However, unless you buy the full ELA license, so if you buy Pick 2, you get automation, yep. But the automation is basically contained to the Ivanti products.
Okay, that's cool.
If you take the whole ELA license, you also get, as you know, the hundreds of connectors that you have for automation as well.
Yeah, that's what because the offboarding story slide that you talked about earlier, that resonates, and that's something that, that's a great conversation starter. Is like, hey, how are you dealing with your employees? And where you get them is, hey, what happens when an employee leaves?
Right.
How do you track all the accounts that they had access to? How do you know they don't have access to your company still? And that resonates. Yep,
for sure. And if you actually deliver onboard and offboarding as it's described in this deck, well, then you're using all of the Ivanti technology anyway. You probably acquired a UIT license, in which case you have automation and all of its connectors, you have reporting analytics and all of its connectors, etc., etc. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to go ahead and send, and I'll send it to Pete, and I'll let Pete disseminate it. I'll send you the deck, so you can have a copy of the deck I've just presented. And just to reiterate at the start, feel free to reach out to me, guys. My email address is on the invite. You all got an email from me before. I'm always available. My cell phone number is 631-806-1829. Feel free to reach out. you know, my phone's always on. But yeah, I mean, you know, we are an accessible organization. So if you need help in any way, I'm always here to help. Andy, Pete, can I do anything else for you guys?
No, John, I think that's good.
That was perfect.
Make one. Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
Oh, no, I was just saying, yeah, go ahead, Danny.
No, I think that's perfect. That's exactly what we needed, and keeping it to the point, and hopefully everybody got a lot out of that. The short message again is if you can tell a little part of the front end story, if you can tell the whole thing, great. But the net result should be to try to get Ivanti in for a meeting. Again, John, I made a point earlier, and I'll say this. I don't know who all's on from the Ivanti side, but you know, you, I, Pete, the rest of us, we live in a special space that Ivanti has bought their way into. They didn't grow up in.
Right.
So you or maybe other people you can refer us to might be better fits to join than the traditional Ivanti SE, because they more often look to us for those answers and can't really play along all that well.
Yeah. No, I absolutely, and I'm more than happy to do that.
All right, guys, you heard it. He's on the hook.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. And, you know, if anything comes up, just feel free to reach out.
All right, guys, thanks.
Cool. Thank you, John.